What if I told you that one of the greatest naval battles in history was not just a battle for territory, but a desperate struggle between civilizations for the very right to exist? It was not a clash of kings or armies. It was a moment when the entire Mediterranean held its breath, waiting to see whose faith and whose will would prove stronger. The future of Europe was at stake, and on that day, the smoke of cannons mingled with the prayers of warriors in the Gulf of Lepanto. Watch the video to the end to find out how just 6 giant floating fortresses were able to change the course of the battle, and why this victory became a myth that proved more important than reality itself. I will reveal to you a secret that changes everything. By 1570, the Ottoman Empire was not just a force, it was a force of nature. After the fall of Constantinople and the brilliant reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, the Ottoman fleet dominated the Mediterranean. Their ships controlled the trade routes, their garrisons stood from Algiers to Azov, and their ambitions seemed limitless. The Christian world was divided, weakened by internal strife, and watched in horror as this unstoppable force advanced. For European monarchs, Ottoman expansion was a constant headache. Spain fought Barbary pirates, vassals of the Sultan, off the coast of North Africa. The Holy Roman Empire held back their advance on land in Hungary. The Venetian Republic, a trading empire, tried to maintain a fragile peace to protect its rich colonies in Cyprus and Crete. They were all rivals and distrusted each other more than they distrusted their common enemy. In 1570, Sultan Selim II, who succeeded Suleiman, decided to strike at the most vulnerable spot. He demanded that Venice cede the island of Cyprus. It was not just a strategic point, it was one of the last major Christian strongholds in the Eastern Mediterranean. For Venice, it was not only a matter of prestige, but also of economic survival, as Cyprus was the jewel in the crown of their overseas empire. Venice's refusal led to the immediate outbreak of war. A huge Ottoman army landed in Cyprus and laid siege to key fortresses. First, Nicosia fell, and then all attention turned to the port city of Famagusta. The heroic defense of Famagusta, led by Marcantonio Bragadino, lasted almost a year, tying up significant Ottoman forces. The fall of Famagusta in August 1571 shook Europe. News of the brutal massacre of the defenders and their commander, despite the promised terms of honorable surrender, dispelled any remaining illusions. It became clear that the Ottoman Empire would not stop, and that Italy itself could be the next target. The threat loomed directly over Rome. It was at this desperate moment that Pope Pius V played a key role. He was not a politician, but a deeply religious man who saw the Ottoman advance as not just a military threat, but a spiritual one. He used all his authority to convince the eternal rivals, Spain and Venice, to unite. It seemed an impossible task. The Spanish king Philip II distrusted the Venetians, considering them to be mercenary merchants who were ready to make a separate peace at any moment. In addition, his own resources were tied up in suppressing the uprising in the Netherlands. The Venetians, for their part, feared that Spain would use the combined fleet to solve its problems in Africa, leaving them to fend for themselves. Nevertheless, in the face of an existential threat and under pressure from the Pope, the alliance was formed. Spain, Venice, and the Papal States were joined by Genoa, Savoy, Malta, and other small Italian states. Thus was born the Holy League, a military alliance created for the sole purpose of finding and destroying the Ottoman fleet. This alliance was fragile, full of internal contradictions and mutual distrust. It was formed out of desperate need, not sincere friendship. The participants argued about funding, command, and the goals of the campaign. But for the first time in many decades, the Christian world was able to field a unified force capable of challenging Ottoman dominance at sea. The question of who would lead this armada was one of the most difficult. The Venetians promoted their experienced admirals, but Spain, which provided the lion's share of ships and soldiers, insisted on its own candidate. In the end, a compromise was reached, but it was an extremely risky one, which, as it turned out, was the key to success. We would love to hear your opinion. What do you think about how a deadly threat can unite even the most irreconcilable enemies? Write about it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Are you ready to learn the truth about how to assemble a fleet of people who hate each other? The assembly of the Holy League's fleet was one of the greatest logistical operations of the 16th century. Ships and people flocked to the port of Messina in Sicily. Spain provided its powerful galleys from Naples and Sicily, as well as its famous infantry, the tercios. Venice, despite its recent losses, provided the lion's share of galleys, including its latest designs. The port of Messina itself turned into a giant anthill. Thousands of sailors, soldiers, craftsmen, and merchants filled the city. The air was filled with the clanging of hammers from the shipyards, shouts in dozens of languages, and the creaking of ropes. The ships had to be not only assembled but also equipped. Tons of gunpowder, cannonballs, provisions in the form of biscuits and salted meat, and thousands of barrels of water were required. One of the most difficult problems was the rowers. Galleys were man-eaters, requiring enormous amounts of muscle power. The Venetians traditionally used free, hired rowers, which boosted their morale. The Spaniards, on the other hand, relied heavily on convicts and prisoners chained to the benches. The mixing of these disparate crews and soldiers led to constant conflicts. Spanish soldiers looked down on Italian sailors, Venetians distrusted Genoese, and German mercenaries had difficulty getting along with the Spanish. Fights and brawls constantly broke out in Messina, threatening to escalate into open clashes between allies. A leader was needed who could not only command but also inspire respect, reconcile enemies, and unite them behind a common goal. The Pope and Philip II chose Don Juan of Austria. He was only 24 years old. It was a risky choice that could have ended in disaster. Don Juan was the illegitimate son of the late Emperor Charles V, and therefore the half-brother of the Spanish King Philip II. He was young, charismatic, handsome, and had already proven himself a capable military leader by suppressing the Moorish uprising in Granada. He was the embodiment of the knightly ideal. Upon arriving in Messina, Don Juan immediately set about restoring order. He used not only his formal authority as commander-in-chief, but also his personal charm. He personally settled disputes between captains, organized reviews and tournaments to boost morale, and displayed ostentatious piety, which impressed the Pope. He also had to coordinate a military council consisting of experienced but stubborn admirals. Among them were the Venetian Sebastiano Venier, a hot-tempered 75-year-old veteran, and the Genoese Giovanni Andrea Doria, nephew of the famous admiral, known for his caution and cool attitude towards the Venetians. Every decision was the subject of lengthy debate. The fleet assembled in Messina was enormous. It consisted of more than 200 galleys, dozens of smaller vessels, and 6 unique ships on which the Venetians had high hopes. Tens of thousands of soldiers and rowers were on board. It was the most powerful Christian armada the Mediterranean had ever seen. While work was in full swing in Messina, the Ottoman fleet under the command of Ali Pasha Muezzinzadeh was not standing still either. After their triumph in Cyprus, they were based in the Gulf of Lepanto, not far from the entrance to the Gulf of Corinth. They were confident in their numerical superiority and experience, considering the Christian fleet to be a rabble incapable of coordinated action. What was Don Juan's main weapon in this situation? But what if I told you that their secret weapon was not made of steel, but of wooden cannons? More on that in the next chapter. I'm going to reveal a closely guarded secret. Sometimes size really does matter, especially when it comes to cannons. The Holy League knew that the Ottoman fleet would most likely outnumber them. They needed a trump card, a technological advantage that could disrupt the usual course of a naval battle, and that trump card was 6 Venetian galleasses. The galleass was the pinnacle of Venetian naval engineering, a true monster of the Renaissance. It was a hybrid, similar in size to a merchant galleon, but retaining the oars of a galley, although it was much larger and less maneuverable. These were the largest rowing vessels built up to that time. The main advantage of the galleass was its artillery power. A typical galley of that time had almost all of its cannons at the bow, as the sides were occupied by rowers. It was designed for frontal attacks, ramming, and boarding. The galleass, on the other hand, was designed as a floating artillery battery. Thanks to its size and high deck, it carried dozens of heavy guns. The cannons were located not only at the bow, but also along the sides and even at the stern. This allowed it to fire in all directions, which was unthinkable for any Ottoman galley. One galleass carried more firepower than a dozen conventional galleys. These ships were slow and clumsy. They had to be towed by ordinary galleys to take up their positions. However, their role in the upcoming battle was not to maneuver, but to serve as indestructible bastions against which the Ottoman formation would be broken. Don Juan and his admiral's plan was to position these 6 galleasses in front of the main fleet as breakwaters. They were to take the first blow from the Ottoman Armada, disrupt their ranks with their devastating fire, and sow panic even before the main battle began. The Ottomans knew about these ships, but they greatly underestimated them. They considered galleasses to be clumsy transport ships that would have little impact on the fast and maneuverable Battle of Galleys. This was their fatal mistake. The galleasses were commanded by experienced Venetian captains who understood the uniqueness of their ships. They knew that their task was to withstand the initial onslaught and give the main fleet of the League a chance to engage in battle on their own terms. Their high sides also made them almost invulnerable to boarding, the Ottomans' main tactical maneuver. When the Holy League fleet finally left Messina and headed east in search of the enemy, these 6 giants were at the forefront. Their appearance inspired confidence in Christian soldiers and sailors. It was visible, tangible proof of their technological superiority. The very fact that the Venetians, known for their thriftiness, risked these expensive and complex machines in battle spoke volumes. The stakes were high. They didn't just bring out their fleet, they put their best and most secret designs on the line. If you like how technology can change the course of history, give this video a thumbs up. What I am about to show you struck terror into the hearts of all of Europe, but they themselves were filled with pride. The Ottoman fleet at Lepanto was commanded by Muezzinzadeh Ali Pasha. Unlike many of his predecessors, he was not an admiral by birth or experience. He was a political appointee, a favorite of Sultan Selim II, and owed his position largely to his marriage to the Sultan's daughter. Despite his lack of deep knowledge of maritime affairs, Ali Pasha was a brave warrior and charismatic leader. He was respected by his men, and his recent triumph in Cyprus instilled boundless confidence in him and his captains. They considered the Christian fleet to be a collection of indecisive merchants and arrogant Spaniards incapable of unity. Under his command was a huge fleet, numbering, according to various estimates, up to 230 galleys and dozens of smaller vessels. It was a formidable force, the core of which consisted of experienced sailors and elite janissaries, hardened in dozens of battles. They were accustomed to victory and saw no reason why this time should be any different. There was also no unity in the Ottoman headquarters. There were other experienced admirals on board, such as Uluj Ali, a formidable corsair and ruler of Algiers, who commanded the left flank. Uluj Ali was a true sea wolf and treated his commander-in-chief with some contempt, considering him a court noble. The Ottoman tactics had been tested by time. They consisted of rapid approach, the use of bow guns for a single volley, and immediate boarding. They relied on the numerical superiority of their soldiers and their superior skills in hand-to-hand combat. The janissaries were considered an invincible infantry. They knew about the existence of Venetian galleys, but, as already mentioned, did not attach much importance to them. Their intelligence reported that these were slow and unwieldy ships that would be easy prey for the maneuverable Ottoman galleys. They planned to simply bypass them and engage the main fleet. Ali Pasha was so confident of victory that he took on board his flagship, the Sultan, a huge treasury intended to pay the troops' salaries after the battle. The sacred green banner with the names of Allah embroidered in gold fluttered on the mast of his ship. This banner was supposed to inspire the warriors to holy war. On the morning of October 7, 1571, when the lookouts reported the approach of the Christian fleet, the Ottoman camp was filled with excitement. Ali Pasha ordered to immediately leave the Gulf of Lepanto and form a battle line. He decided to give battle immediately, seeking to destroy the combined forces of the enemy in one blow. Their battle formation was a giant crescent stretching for several kilometers. Ali Pasha himself was in the center, with Mehmet Sirocco, the governor of Egypt, on the right flank and the cunning Uluj Ali on the left. They advanced on the Christian fleet, expecting an easy victory. Their confidence was their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. They underestimated their enemy's determination, their technological advantage, and, most importantly, the desperation that drove the Christians to fight with unprecedented ferocity. Do you think their confidence was justified? In the next chapter, you will learn about a technological marvel that the Ottomans completely underestimated. At dawn on October 7, 1571, the two greatest fleets of their time met in the narrow waters at the entrance to the Gulf of Corinth. It was a grand and terrifying sight. More than 400 warships and tens of thousands of men prepared for a decisive battle. The wind, which had initially favored the Ottomans, changed direction by morning, which the Christians took as a good sign. Don Juan of Austria arranged his Holy League fleet in a classic line. This formation stretched for 4 miles. The left flank, closer to the shore, was commanded by the Venetian Agostino Barbarigo. The right flank, open to the sea, was commanded by the Genoese Giovanni Andrea Doria. The center was led by Don Juan himself on his flagship, the Real. Behind the main line was a reserve under the command of the Marquis of Santa Cruz. His task was to come to the aid of any section where the battle was going badly. But the main tactical innovation was the positioning of 6 galleasses. Don Juan ordered them to advance a mile ahead of the main line, 2 in front of each of the 3 main sectors. The Ottoman fleet, as planned, formed a wide crescent to try to envelop the Christian flanks. Ali Pasha was in the center on the Sultan, directly opposite Don Juan. On the right flank of the Ottomans, opposite the Venetian Barbarigo, was Mehmet Sirocco. On the left, in the open sea opposite Doria, stood Ulugh Jali. When the Ottoman ships moved to attack, they encountered their first obstacle, the galleys. The Venetian giants, which had been towed into position and left there, looked like immovable islands. The Ottoman galleys, propelled by oars, were forced to sail around them. And at that moment, the galleasses opened fire. It was a volley unlike anything the Ottoman sailors had ever heard before. Heavy cannons mounted on the sides fired grape shot and cannonballs at the dense rows of advancing galleys. Unlike the bow cannons, which could only fire once before closing in, the galleasses fired continuously. The effect was devastating. The volleys literally riddled the Ottoman ships, breaking oars, knocking over cannons, and creating chaos on the decks. Several Ottoman galleys were sunk or seriously damaged before they could even approach the Christian line. The Ottoman formation was broken at the very beginning. The captains had to maneuver to get around these floating fortresses, which disrupted their famous crescent formation. Some galleys stopped to try to attack the galleasses, but their low sides prevented them from boarding the tall Venetian ships, and the return fire was devastating. This first strike had enormous psychological significance. The Ottomans' confidence was shaken. They had not expected such powerful resistance. The Christian fleet, on the other hand, was encouraged by the damage their secret weapon was inflicting. Having passed through the fiery barrier of the galleys, albeit with losses, the Ottoman fleet rushed towards the main line of the Holy League. The ships of the central squadrons, led by the flagships of Don Juan and Ali Pasha, rushed towards each other. The main battle, a battle of boarding and desperate combat, was just beginning. Don Juan ordered the sacred banner of the League to be raised on his flagship, and priests throughout the fleet gave the soldiers absolution. The young commander, clad in shining armor, sailed in a fast boat along the line of his ships, inspiring soldiers and sailors. The battle for the future of the Mediterranean was entering its decisive phase. Guess what happened next? When the smoke from the galleys' volleys cleared, the central arena of the battle came into view. The 2 flagships, the Spanish Real under the command of Don Juan and the Ottoman Sultan under the command of Ali Pasha, were moving inexorably toward each other. This was not just a collision of ships, it was a duel between leaders, on which the outcome of the entire battle depended. The Real and the Sultan were the pride of their fleets, huge galleys carrying hundreds of soldiers. Don Juan's flagship was reinforced by elite Spanish tercios, the best infantry in Europe. Ali Pasha's flagship was defended by select janissaries, armed with composite bows and yataguns, considered invincible in close combat. The 2 ships collided with a deafening crash. The bowguns fired a simultaneous volley, and in the next moment, the ships grappled side by side. The boarding battle began. Hundreds of men clashed in a desperate struggle on the decks, which instantly turned into an arena of chaos. The janissaries from the Sultan attempted to board the Real twice, and twice the Spanish infantry threw them back. The battle was incredibly intense. with both sides aware that the entire fleet was watching them. The fall of the flagship would mean an immediate collapse of morale. Don Juan personally led his men into battle, fighting in the front ranks. Ali Pasha, also demonstrating incredible bravery, inspired his janissaries. At this critical moment, the reserve admirals of the Holy League saw that their commander was in trouble. The Marquis of Santa Cruz immediately led his ships to the rescue. Other galleys began to approach the clashing flagships on both sides, turning the center of the battle into one giant, chaotic pile of dozens of ships. The galleys collided and clung to each other, while soldiers ran from deck to deck. It was no longer a naval battle, but a land battle on a floating platform. The Spanish tercios, armed with arquebuses, had a firepower advantage over the janissaries, who still relied on bows. Arquebus fire at close range was devastating. Gradually, the Christian soldiers began to crowd the defenders of the Sultan. The third attack by the Spanish on the Ottoman flagship proved decisive. Soldiers from the Real and the approaching support galleys poured onto the deck of the Sultan. In the chaos of battle, Ali Pasha was defeated. His fall caused instant panic among the crew. Shortly thereafter, the Sultan's sacred green banner was torn down, and the Christian standard flew over the Ottoman flagship. It was a turning point. The entire Ottoman center, witnessing the fall of their admiral and his banner, faltered. Command was lost, and what had been a battle began to turn into a rout. At the same time, fierce fighting was also taking place on the flanks. On the left flank of the League, the Venetian Barbarigo was forced to fight in unfavorable conditions near the shore, but his ships held their ground. On the right flank, the cunning Ulugh Ali tried to outmaneuver the Genoese Doria by stretching the line and attempting to get behind the Christians. How would you feel if you were in the middle of such a clash? In the next chapter, we will see how the battle on the flanks determined the final outcome. While the drama unfolded around the flagships in the center, equally fierce battles raged on the flanks. On the left flank of the Holy League, near the coast, Venetian galleys under the command of Agostino Barbarigo clashed with the right flank of Mehmed Sirocco's Ottomans. Sirocco was an experienced admiral and attempted to use his knowledge of the shallow waters to outflank the Venetians. Barbarigo, also an experienced sailor, saw through this maneuver. He ordered his galleys to stay as close to the shore as possible to prevent the Ottomans from surrounding them. A fierce battle ensued at close range. The ships became entangled in a dense mass, and the battle turned into a series of desperate boarding skirmishes. The Venetians fought fiercely, knowing that they were defending their native waters and avenging Cyprus. They suffered heavy losses, but did not retreat. In the heat of battle, Agostino Barbarigo himself was wounded, but his men continued to fight, preventing the Ottoman flank from breaking through. On the opposite right flank of the League, in the open sea, a completely different battle was taking place. Here, the two most cunning admirals of the battle clashed. The Genoese Giovanni Andrea Doria and the Algerian corsair Ulugh Ali. Ulugh Ali commanded the most maneuverable and experienced wing of the Ottoman fleet. Doria, fearing that Ulugh Ali would bypass him in a wide arc and strike the rear of the Christian center, began to shift to the right, taking his ships further and further out to sea. This maneuver created a dangerous gap between the center of the League and its right flank. Ulugh Ali immediately took advantage of this. He did not pursue Doria, but sharply changed course and led some of his best galleys straight into the gap that had formed. His target was the ships of the Order of Malta, which were at the edge of the central group. The Knights Hospitaller, known for their bravery, found themselves in a desperate situation, attacked by superior forces. Ulugh Ali's galleys fell upon the Maltese, capturing several ships. It seemed that the Ottomans would be able to turn the tide of battle in this sector and strike Don Juan in the rear, who was busy fighting the Sultan at that moment. It was the most critical moment of the battle for the Holy League. However, at that moment, reinforcements arrived. The Marquis of Santa Cruz, who had already provided support to the center, saw the danger on the right flank. He immediately turned his fresh galleys around and struck the flank of Ulugh Ali's attacking ships. Ulugh Ali realized that his venture had failed. The center of the Ottoman fleet had already been destroyed, and his own admiral had been defeated. Finding himself between Doria's squadron, which was now returning, and Santa Cruz's reserves, the Algerian corsair made the only correct decision. Gathering the ships that were still able to fight, He broke through the thinning ranks of the Christians and managed to escape into the open sea. He was one of the few Ottoman commanders who managed to save part of his squadron from complete destruction. His maneuver was bold and skillful, but he could no longer change the overall outcome of the battle. By the time Ulugh Ali retreated, the Ottoman left flank under the command of Sirocco had also been completely destroyed by the Venetians. The Battle of Lepanto, which lasted more than 4 hours, was coming to an end. It was a complete and unconditional triumph for the Holy League. When the smoke cleared over the Gulf of Lepanto, the victors were greeted by a scene of total destruction. The Ottoman fleet, which had seemed invincible that morning, had virtually ceased to exist. Most of their galleys had been either captured or sunk. Only a small squadron commanded by Ulugh Ali managed to break away and escape. The Ottoman losses were colossal. Tens of thousands of sailors, rowers, and soldiers were killed or taken prisoner. The Holy League captured more than 100 enemy galleys, which were immediately incorporated into their fleets. A huge treasure chest was captured from Ali Pasha's flagship. But the most important result of the battle was the liberation of thousands of Christian slaves who had been chained to the oars on the Ottoman galleys. When Christian soldiers broke the chains, their jubilation mingled with the joy of the victors. This scene became one of the most powerful symbols of the victory at Lepanto. The losses of the Holy League were also significant, but incomparable to those of the enemy. They lost several galleys and thousands of men, including many valiant commanders, such as the Venetian admiral Agostino Barbarigo. Don Juan of Austria was also wounded in battle. News of the victory at Lepanto spread throughout Europe with incredible speed, causing widespread jubilation. In Rome, Pope Pius V, who according to legend had a vision of victory at the very hour of the battle, organized grand celebrations. Throughout Spain, Venice, and Italy, bells rang and Thanksgiving services were held. The psychological effect was immeasurably more important than the military one. For the first time in a century, the myth of the Ottomans' invincibility at sea was dispelled. The Christian world saw that, by uniting, it was capable of resisting a formidable enemy and winning. It was a tremendous boost to morale. Don Juan of Austria instantly became a hero to the entire Christian world. His youth, courage, and piety made him a living legend, the ideal crusader knight. The best artists painted his portraits, and poets dedicated odes to him. However, in strategic terms, the fruits of victory were not so significant. After the triumph, old contradictions between the allies flared up with renewed vigor. The Venetians wanted to use the fleet to recapture Cyprus, but the Spaniards were not interested in this. Winter interrupted the hostilities, and by the spring of 1572, the Holy League had still not been able to agree on a unified plan. Don Juan tried to hold the alliance together, but political intrigues proved stronger. The fleet remained inactive, wasting precious time. Meanwhile, Constantinople was not sitting idly by. Grand Vizier Mehmed Sokolu, with his characteristic energy, set about rebuilding the fleet. He famously told the Venetian ambassador that at Lepanto, the Christians had only shaved his beard, while the Ottomans in Cyprus had cut off their hand. The beard, he claimed, would grow back. The Grand Vizier's words proved prophetic. The Ottoman Empire demonstrated an incredible ability to recover. Using all the resources of their vast country, the shipyards of Istanbul worked day and night. In just 1 year, the Ottomans built a new fleet that was equal in size to the one lost at Lepanto. This new fleet was, of course, not as good. The ships were hastily built from raw timber, and the experienced crews and archers who had died in battle were irreplaceable. Nevertheless, by 1572, the Ottoman Armada was back at sea, demonstrating its unbroken will. The Holy League, on the other hand, was falling apart before our eyes. In 1573, the Venetian Republic, exhausted by war and seeing no further support from Spain, took a humiliating step. It concluded a separate peace with the Ottoman Empire. Under the terms of this peace, Venice not only officially ceded Cyprus, for which the war had begun, but also undertook to pay the Sultan a huge indemnity. It was as if the victor was paying tribute to the vanquished. The Holy League officially ceased to exist. It seemed that all the sacrifices of Lepanto had been in vain. The Ottoman Empire retained control of the Eastern Mediterranean, and Venice suffered a political defeat. Spain shifted its attention to the Netherlands, and Don Juan of Austria was sent as governor to Brussels, where he soon died. However, in the long term, the Battle of Lepanto was of fundamental importance. It was a turning point. Although the Ottomans rebuilt their fleet, they never again risked engaging in a general battle with the combined Christian forces. The battle finally halted their expansion in the Western Mediterranean. The center of maritime trade and power began to shift from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. The era of great discoveries in Atlantic trade had already begun, and Lepanto became the last chapter in the history of Mediterranean domination. In addition, Lepanto was the last great battle of the era of rowing ships. It was the culmination and decline of the era of galleys. Already in this battle, the artillery of the galleasses showed that the future belonged to sailing ships with powerful side armament. The victory at Lepanto became a permanent part of European culture. Poems, paintings, and books were written about it. Miguel de Cervantes, the future author of Don Quixote, fought at Lepanto and was proud of it all his life. Thus, Lepanto was not so much a military victory as a psychological and cultural one. The myth of Lepanto, of the triumph of united Christianity, proved to be much more important and enduring than its immediate strategic results. It was a symbol that the onslaught could be stopped. The Battle of Lepanto remains one of the most spectacular and significant naval battles in world history. It was the culmination of centuries of conflict for control of the Mediterranean Sea. It was not just a clash between two fleets, but between two worlds, two ideologies, and two geopolitical systems. The main lesson of Lepanto is the power of unity. Victory was only possible because eternal rivals Spain and Venice were able to overcome their mutual distrust for the sake of a common goal. Although this alliance was short-lived, it showed what could be achieved through joint efforts. The battle also demonstrated the importance of technological superiority. 6 Venetian galleasses essentially won the first, most important phase of the battle. They proved that firepower and innovation can defeat numerical superiority in traditional tactics. Lepanto was a triumph for a new type of warrior. Spanish soldiers with arquebuses proved more effective than janissaries with bows. It marked the end of the era of cold weapons and boarding combat, and the dawn of the era of gunpowder and artillery, which would dominate the battlefields for centuries to come. The personality of the commander also played a decisive role. The charisma, youth, and courage of Don Juan of Austria cemented the fragile alliance. He was able to instill confidence in victory in his men, which ultimately led to triumph in the desperate battle of the flagships. For the Ottomans, Lepanto was a lesson in the consequences of overconfidence. Underestimating the enemy, its technological innovations, and its determination led to disaster. The empire lost not only its fleet, but also a generation of its best sailors and admirals. Although the Ottomans rebuilt their fleet, their naval dominance was irreversibly undermined. They began to act more cautiously, avoiding major clashes. The Battle of Lepanto effectively established the boundaries of influence in the Mediterranean, which remained in place for a long time. Today, Lepanto reminds us how fragile the balance of power can be, and how a single event, a single day, a single battle can change the course of history. It was not just a battle, it was a moment of truth for the whole of European civilization. This battle marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. The era of galleys, which had ruled the Mediterranean for centuries, was now a thing of the past, giving way to the age of sail and cannons. And in the roar of cannons off the coast of Greece, the world heard the birth of a new Europe. The Battle of Lepanto is a story of how despair breeds courage, how technology changes the rules of war, and how one man's faith can unite nations. It is a great naval clash, forever remembered as the moment when Europe fought for its survival. The Battle of Lepanto was much more than just a naval battle. It was a cultural and psychological turning point that determined the fate of the Mediterranean for centuries to come. It showed that even the most powerful empire could be stopped if opposed by a united will, backed by new technology and courageous leadership. The victory of the Holy League dispelled the myth of Ottoman invincibility at sea and gave Europe a much-needed respite and belief in its own strength. Although the alliance fell apart, Cyprus was lost. The echoes of the cannons of Lepanto rang out for a long time. reminding people of the day when the Christian world united and won. What do you think about this battle? Was it really a battle for survival or just a major battle in a long series of wars? Suggest topics for future videos you would like to see on our channel in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new research on the great battles of the past.